Hello, welcome back. And today should be pretty exciting because we have the big truck in the shop. This thing is going to be going under some different changes. I have to get front sway bar off of it still, get all that stuff powder coated like I was saying inside of some previous videos. I got all the carnage off the rear axle that broke when we were doing donuts inside the field. The new drive shaft is complete. I have to pick that up tomorrow and this truck will be running and driving again. We got the Megacab into the shop as well. We actually backed it underneath this little loft deal because then we can put them side by side and it gives us more room to work on it. I went ahead and got all the steering hooked up on here. This bar that's on it right now is off of my truck. Somehow, I don't know how, the measurements were identical for this drag link and this drag link, so that worked out amazing. And we should be able to bend this tubing that's already on here around the sway bar when that arm's built. We have to do a lot of work to this truck still because I kind of lifted it a little bit too big, and now we have to cut that center support out of the cradle, and we have to build a drop box mount for it, which means I'll most likely end up taking this drop box out of this truck because I'm not going to be driving this thing while everything's getting powder coated. And obviously, when it's getting powder coated, all the bars will be off of it, so it's not even drivable. So we'll take that drop box out eventually. We'll slap it into this truck, be able to get all those drive shafts built. I'll probably end up ordering a new drop box for that truck. We got a pallet of parts laying there for my Megacab. But before we get into anything else on this video, we have a little tiny project we're gonna do on my brother's third gen right now. And that is a bed liner, because right now, his bed's like disgusting. It has garbage inside of it. And yeah, so nothing beats a fresh bed mat on the floor of these beds. So what we got is a Lasfit truck bed liner. We're gonna take this out of the box. We're gonna get this bed cleaned out of this truck and put that bed liner into it. And the back of this truck should look a lot better. And then once that's done, we'll be able to take my Megacab, which is parked outside the shop, get that inside of here. And as you guys can tell by the thumbnail, I'm getting carried away with that truck. And I probably shouldn't be, since it's my tow rig. And I was saying in a previous video that that's like the perfect setup for a tow rig. But I have this thing in my head that I can build it the way I want to build it and still keep all of the factory towing capabilities of that truck. So I cannot wait to get that truck in the shop. But for now, let's get this box opened up and get this bed liner thrown in. Now that we got the bed cleaned out, we actually power washed it. That way we got all the dirt out of it. We're able to slap the bed liner into it, and that should look a lot better. Then we'll probably end up adding the lights underneath of here, like I have on my truck. That way when he's loading and unloading at nighttime, he can light up the bed, see everything inside there. Before we throw this bed liner in, I would definitely recommend you guys all to just go buy one of these things right now because you won't regret it. And the reason I like these, how I was saying, is they're not really thick, but they're very durable. So they don't sit really high off the bed, but they're still like a very, very sturdy material. And overall, I'm going to use these bed liners in every build. So we're gonna throw that in really quick and then get my Megacab and drag that thing inside because, yeah, I probably shouldn't be doing what I'm doing, but I'm going to. Look at that, magic. And then once it heats up a little bit more, we'll be able to have it laying flat. But for now, we're gonna hop inside here, push it down as best as we can, get it around all the edges good. And then on my truck, I took a couple screws. I screwed this down. That way the edge doesn't get all ripped up when you're loading and unloading the truck. Bed liner installed. And now we can move on to getting my Megacab into the shop. And yes, hopefully I don't regret what I'm about to do, but it should be pretty exciting. So we just got the Megacab into the shop. I went ahead, popped the hood, got the jump box on it to get it charged up because the steps are hanging down, because the batteries are completely drained from it sitting for the past week and a half. But when I put the battery charger onto the battery, I heard the horn honk. I said, that's great. I go to open up the door, and obviously the truck is locked with the keys in it. So now I have to run back to the house really quick, grab the keys, and we'll be able to get into doing what we're doing with this truck today. As a little hint, if you guys can't already tell from the thumbnail, that area right there is going to be changing very, very, very soon. I'll give you guys a little sneak peek of what is going on in this build. So what you guys just see me build are mini cradles for the Megacab, and that is the first step we need to get done in order to lift this truck higher. That's right, I said it. We're lifting this truck up about 6 more inches over what it is now. So right now it's on about a 7-inch lift to the front with a 37-inch tire. I want to go up to about 12 inches in the front to be able to run a 26 and a 40-inch tire on it. I think that'll look a lot better overall because this truck has been inside this form for quite a while now. I would say about a year. And I'm always wanting to switch up what I'm doing and how I'm doing my builds and keep providing content for all you guys to watch. So right now, I just got done welding up these mini cradles. I got weld-on traction bar mounts for the rear axle that will go around the rear axle, weld onto there, be able to hook up the traction bar from this bracket to this bracket on the frame, and on the front, be able to run a bar from right here down to the axle, and then another top bar from the frame to the axle, which will allow us to 4-link the front of this truck, and it should improve the ride quality a lot better because whenever I've 4-linked at this height in the past, it changes the whole ride quality because when you lift these trucks, all of the bracketry that you get with the lift kits just drop everything down. And in my opinion, and from what I've learned, is when you do a 4-link, the flatter the bar is on the front axle, the better that it rides. So when you have a bar that's like really steep, kind of like this one really isn't steep at all. But when you do leveling kits, I should say, it just extends those out. That's why when you level a truck, usually it just kills the ride quality if you don't have the drop brackets. So with this cradle, we'll have a pretty decent angle for the front arms. Traction bars will be at a good angle as well. So right now what we're gonna do is get that cradle mocked up to the frame. I'm gonna weld on the traction bar tabs to the rear, but I gotta pull some measurements in the front to get the coilover brackets designed. I have a pretty good idea on how I'm gonna do the brackets for the front that bolts the coilover straight into the truck because like I was saying previously, Rough Country does not yet make a coilover conversion kit for this truck, but they were nice enough to send me out the coilovers for a 13 and newer truck. This is a 2012, so the difference between 94 to 12 and then 13 to now is 94 to 12, the spring and the shock are all inside one location versus the newer frames have the spring on one side and the shock on the other side. They have yet to design the brackets to do the coilovers on these frames, but I'm gonna go ahead and get it built now. I gotta build another bracket that will move a shock from here to the outside of the frame. That way we still have the actual spring and shock itself that holds up the truck and the outside shock. So now I'm gonna go ahead and jack up the rear axle to have some more room down there to weld on those brackets. Then once those brackets are on, I'll be able to get the mini cradle mocked up. And then we'll lift this truck up to see exactly what height we're gonna lift it to. But I'm thinking at about 12 inches, we should be pretty good. So I just got that axle bracket welded on. I went ahead and grabbed my angle finder that I'm going to stick onto this bracket to find the exact angle of how that one is to match the passenger side. Then once those brackets are on, I'll be able to lower the rear of the truck down. We'll take the mini cradles, we'll slide those into the frame, get those mocked up, and that'll give me an idea on how I want to build the front arms, build the traction bars. I've been thinking about doing a custom CNC bar. I was gonna go tubing on this truck, where it's just regular round DOM tube, but I've been thinking about doing a custom CNC arm, kind of like the arms on this truck or on my big truck. But right now my brother is getting the other bracket tacked up there. I'll get it all welded to the axle completely, lower it down like I was saying, and then get this mini cradle on. We just got the rear axle tabs welded onto the axle to hold the traction bars. Those things turned out absolutely amazing. Having the traction bars on the truck should definitely change the quality of the towing because it'll hold the axle inside of one place. And the wrench should ride a lot better. And then if we do like 100-mile-an-hour rolling burnouts, the axle will not wobble and want to fall out of the truck. So that's definitely a plus. So now we're gonna push these mini cradles up to the frame, see how they look. I'm gonna get some measurements for the arms, and then I'll be able to see what I'm gonna do with those front coilover conversion brackets I have to build. Like I was saying, I do have a good idea on how I'm going to do them. I just want to double check everything because I don't want to have to make it twice. And that should look a lot better with the coilover on it instead of the spring and shock that's on it now. Mini cradle is mocked up to the frame. We have, I think, 5 3/4 bolt holes to drill all the way through the frame. That way we can bolt the cradle onto the frame because I don't want to have to weld this on. Because if you weld it on, you really can't powder coat it unless you powder coat the whole frame. And right now I don't want to get into doing that. So we'll get those holes drilled, that thing bolted on. They'll be able to powder coat the bracket one color, the overlay another color. I went ahead and got polished overlays cut as well for the truck. That way when I get the wheels and tires for the truck, which will be polished, the overlays will match. So we'll have a polished wheel there, a polished overlay, probably some other polished accents on the truck, which should definitely change the whole look of it. But right now, we're gonna get the coilovers out of the box. I have to see how I'm gonna do the brackets, and we're gonna hold the coilovers up to it and the shocks to see how they'll look. Here's the coilover we're gonna run on this truck. So I'll probably mount this side of the frame straight, mount the reservoir off to the side towards the front of the truck, and then come over here, we have these Radflow external shocks, which will give you guys an idea on what I was talking about with the outside shock. So basically when that coilover is mounted inside here, we'll have this shock that'll sit outside just like that, which should look very good because I have a thing for having shocks with reservoirs and I love them. And in my opinion, it'll look a lot better. But now that I think about it, we should probably add these to my big truck too. Because right now, the truck is kind of looking like it's on stilts because it's got like a empty cap right here. So then we'll mount another shock right here next to it, which would look a lot better. Obviously, I'd buy a way beefier shock for this truck because this thing's absolutely insanely massive. But for the Megacab, these things will work perfectly. And geez, that cradle looks very good from afar. I've been talking about doing this for about 2 years now because I bought the truck, I think in October of 22. So it's been a little over 2 years since I've had the truck. It was a single wheel on stock suspension. I put 36-inch tall tires on it and it didn't turn but like a quarter of a turn. Then I lifted it to a 5-inch lift on 22s. Then eventually that evolved into a 26x14 on the truck. Then I got this bright idea to smash the bed of it with an excavator. And then it evolved into the dually that it is now. Once we get the coilovers installed and the external shocks installed, that's kind of how it'll look from the side. Obviously we can't just put that in right now because we don't have any brackets for it yet. But I want to jack the truck up really quick to see how high it's going to sit. And I'm thinking we go up like 5 to 6 more inches. But right now the truck sits on a 7-inch lift versus stock. And it's kind of crazy because I was thinking like when this truck was stock, it was a lot lower. And now, I mean, the mirror's like 7 feet off the ground because I'm 8'10". I stand about a foot over the mirror. But when you open up the door, you can definitely see the cradle a lot better. And it's probably those steps that throw it off. So maybe we'll rip the steps off of it, but then that'd be pointless. So we probably won't do that. But let's jack the truck up really quick because I want to see where it's going to sit at about 7 inches higher. So I'll jack up the front axle, jack up the rear axle. And that'll give me an idea on how it will sit when it's done. So we just got the truck jacked up about 7 more inches than it was on the suspension it is now. And this thing sits absolutely massive. I mean, like I was saying, I'm like 8 foot tall and my head and mirror gap is like still 4 inches over the top of my head. But right now, that should sit about a 12-inch lift. And this thing looks absolutely like insanely massive. And I never would have thought I would lift this truck to this height. But at this height, I still should be able to tow my gooseneck. Really, that's all that matters because it's the only thing I really use this truck for, besides like daily driving it around town. But with it lifted up, you can see that cradle a lot better. And we will still have a decent angle from here to the bottom of the axle. And then once that bar's on, we'll have another good angle from right here to the top of the axle. So I'll take off that drop bracket and this drop bracket when I do so. You kind of get like a whole visual of how the truck will look when it's lifted. It may not look massive on camera, but trust me, in person, this thing is like way bigger than it was. And I'm absolutely geeked to have this truck at this height because right now you got to step like 40 feet in the air to get into it. It's not as big as that one, but for a tow rig, it's a pretty big truck. So I think now we have to order 26s and 40s for this truck because once it's lifted bigger, it might look stupid on these 22s and 37s. All my boys over at TIS, get a new set of wheel and tires for this truck on the way. And I cannot wait to see how it would look on a polished wheel, especially with the coilovers and polished shocks and the polished overlays. It's going to change the whole look of this truck. I know I've said it like 10 times. I'm just like really excited to see this truck in another form because I've been driving it like this for about a year now. And it's always good to have like something different to drive every other day. But this thing will probably be inside of its last form as a tow rig at this height. Then maybe eventually it'll get lifted big like this one. I don't know yet. I might fall in love with it on the lift it's on now, and I might just keep it that way. That way it is still drivable. But I don't think we need to go to this height because we already have a Megacab that height. We have the second gen, that's literally a monster truck. That for some reason still isn't fixed, but we'll get to that. So this truck will be up on stands for about the next week or so, I would say. Once I get the parts cut that I need for that truck, we'll be able to do more to it. But with that being said with that one, I guess we could talk about this one for a minute. So like I was saying, if you guys are new to the channel or you guys didn't watch the last video, we went ahead and got the sway bar stuff built, got a new drag link built for the truck as well. We broke the drive shaft doing donuts with it. That probably wasn't my best idea, but I did. So once we get the new drive shaft picked up for this, it'll be back driving around, but I am just gonna take the drop box out of this truck for now to mock up and build the mount for this truck and get all the drive shaft made for this truck. And then one of these two trucks will get a brand new drop box. It'll probably be this one because once I take that box out and install it into this one, I'm not gonna wanna keep swapping them back and forth. But what's gonna get powder coated now is these brackets, the sway bar, the links obviously, the drag link as well. The new drive shaft will need repowdered, even though it's already been powder coated one time. I'm having a little mishap with these monstrous tires hitting the sway bars when I jump this thing or I go off-roading with it. So I'm gonna have to get new sway bar links built for it, get those bent around the tire. That way it doesn't rub them. We have to get this thing completely detailed because it hasn't been washed in about 2 months now. The Megacab, we are just waiting on steel to get the drop box mounted like I was saying. I have to do all the final alignments on it to get all of these control arms centered. The axles are pretty centered right now, but once we get the angle finders on it and get this truck aligned, that part of it will be complete. And the Megacab is in like its final stages before it gets to drive for the first time. And I cannot wait to drive this truck because it's been like a year in the making. Last winter, this was my project slightly until this one came back in the picture. And I kind of just pulled the trigger and said, you know what? It's time to get this truck done because I've had it on the channel for 4 years. Everybody wanted to see this truck get done. And I know I took forever on it, but now that it is complete, I can move on to the next winter project, which is this one. We are probably going to do dual steering stabilizers on it, so I'll build the bracket to come off the axle to hold 2 shocks right there. We already have the bracket on the bottom to hold the coilover and then the external shock that goes from there to there. And now you guys can see what I was talking about with this truck and how the shock goes versus this truck, how it has the spot for the spring and then the spot for the shock next to it. So essentially, when my Megacab's done with the new suspension I'm building for it, the shocks will look just like this. So you'll have the coilover right here, then right there, the factory hole in this frame will be another shock. And that's what I was talking about with putting the external shock next to the coilover. So this gives you guys a better idea on how it'll look. But if you guys see here, the cradle right now has cutouts on the inside. So I'm going to plate the inside of the cradle to be able to put the drop box into it. I'll probably end up welding the cradle all the way around on the edges. That way from the outside, you guys can see the solid plate behind it and have nice welds ran all the way around the inside of it. That should make the attention to detail a lot better on this truck. Still have my brother's 3rd gen that we're probably gonna end up lifting bigger. I would say in about 2 weeks. We have all the parts getting cut for that. But with that being said, the Megacab is up on stands. I have to get to the designing and we have a lot of work to get done. So that's gonna end today's video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.